As a child of the 80s, I grew up with this idea that teaching lessons in strange ways is really cool. I'm sure I got it from the movies, right? So when I was a youth pastor, I thought I'd try my own Mr. Miyagi teaching method with the youth group. Now, do you remember Mr. Miyagi, right? He had Daniel wash the car, wax the car, paint the fence so he could learn all these karate moves. It's like, oh, wow, maybe I can do this, right? Now, notice the word tried. I broke the youth group into teams and gave them puzzles and told them to race to see which team could finish first. So since we were getting ready for a missions trip, I was trying to teach them about unity. I was trying to teach them that we need each other, that you can't do it on your own. So I made some adjustments to the puzzle. I took out just one or two pieces from each puzzle and mixed them with the rivals' puzzles, right? Here's what I thought would happen. I thought they'd get close to finishing their puzzle and realize, oh, this piece of the unicorn doesn't match with my kitty picture, right? And they'd have empty spaces. I thought they'd look at other teams and realize, oh, maybe you're having the same struggle. I thought there'd be this moment where they realized, I need somebody else, right? I thought there'd be this great kumbaya moment of unity in the youth group. That was my hope. I am not Mr. Miyagi. Most teams had only one or two who were even doing the puzzles. They got frustrated and quit. In the end, I told them what I did, and they're all just like, you're dumb, Eric. You're stupid. What? Like, fail, right? Now, as I've been preparing this sermon series about love, I've noticed that God makes Mr. Miyagi look like the kiddie pool. He is so far advanced in this way. Think about it in your own life. God sometimes does things that are strange to us in the moment. Like, what's going on? But what do we find out later? When we take a longer look and understand the bigger picture, we can start to see how genius God was and is. Let me share an example as it relates to how God forms and shapes us to become more like Jesus. You see, God doesn't let us live these comfortable lives in the ways that we want to. If it was up to us, I imagine that we'd either have God do one of two things. Either he'd snap his fingers and make us disappear into heaven the moment we believe or put our trust in Jesus. Either that, or we want God to let us keep living on earth, but only in the most comfortable ways. Now, if we're honest, most of the time, we want God to leave us alone. That we'd keep to ourselves and only worry about our family. And probably deep down, most of us want God to kind of sanctify this Lone Ranger version of Christianity that suits us. That would be easier, right? The only problem is God doesn't do either of those things, right? When was the last time you saw somebody just magically disappear, right? No. Actually, the way God tells us to live is contrary to our ease and comfort. Maybe chief among those ways is God's command that we've been focusing on is to love others. How God tells us to live is actually really contrary to our natural inclinations. Think of it. God tells us to consider others more significant than ourselves. How much more radical and out of step with our natural inclinations can you get? In fact, almost 20 times in the New Testament, we're told to love one another. I mean, it's so repetitive, it's hard to ignore. Jesus himself commands it in John's gospel. That should be enough, but there are more. We see that command in Romans, in 1 Corinthians, in 1 Thessalonians, in 1 Peter. We see it in 1 and 2 John. On top of that, there are 30 other commands about how we should treat each other. That means there are over 50 verses in our Bibles telling us how to live, and almost every one of those runs contrary to our natural inclinations of how we want to live. We're supposed to be devoted to one another, to honor one another, to live in harmony and build one another up. We're told to accept one another, admonish one another, serve one another, care for one another, bear one another's burdens. We're told to forgive one another. God tells us to be patient with each other, to bear with one another, encourage one another, exhort one another, show hospitality, and pray for one another. I could go on, but you get the point. Some of these things come easier than others, but none of these commands sounds like this. Build a home. Make it as comfortable as you can. Make it your sanctuary. Go live there in peace and quiet without the need for anybody else, right? That doesn't sound like that at all. The reality is God is very concerned with how we interact with each other. It matters a great deal to God, and a lot of his commands run contrary to how we'd live if we're left to ourselves. So it kind of makes us wonder, okay, God, why? Like, what is your purpose in this? If he's really like a super version of Mr. Miyagi, why does God tell us to live in these ways? What should we learn? Why does he want us to love one another, to serve one another, care for one another, consider others more significant than ourselves? Why? There's actually a lot of reasons, a lot of things God's doing. Every command of God that we endeavor to obey should make us realize how unable we're to do it, to actually do it. And when we give up and turn to God for strength to do it, it brings God glory. That's one reason. So commanding us to live in ways we're incapable of actually living makes us more dependent on God. God is also teaching us, here's another way, training us to be citizens of his kingdom, which is how we'll live for all of eternity. And his kingdom is not like this world at all, so it's like orientation for eternity. But what I want to highlight is this third reason. These commands develop a deeper humility. This sermon series is all about loving others. And I think one of the great keys to loving others is to develop deeper humility. One of the great ways to love others is to develop greater humility. So how does God increase our humility and our capacity to love? God slams us together in community to make us more humble. And now, let me put on my nerd glasses for a moment. We get the word humble from the Latin word hummus, which isn't a tasty dip for crackers, sorry. Hummus in Latin means fertile ground. It refers to the material in soil that's like supercharged for growth. The special material in the soil is the key. That is the superfood for plants. And that special material in the soil comes from the decomposition of vegetable and animal matter. You know where I'm getting at? The key to rich soil comes from something else dying. The decomposition or breaking down of something else builds up whatever is planted in that soil. And that's where we get the word humility. Bill Hull wrote a book about loving like Jesus, and he puts this all together. He says, likewise, God breaks us down, enabling us to become more humble. He says, when we are humble, we are fertile soil, ready to be used by God to bring life to this dying world. Oh, what a picture, right? And if you've ever been truly humbled, or been humbled by God, you get that illustration on a deep level. In a lot of ways, it feels like dying, right? It's painful. It feels like you're being broken down. But on the other side, you can start to see all the ways God can and does use you to bring comfort and joy and life to others. All of that is introduction. Today's sermon is a bit of a transition message. The last 2 weeks, we looked at the quality of God's love, and then we focused on what God's love does. Now, we're going to dive into ways that we should love others in response to God's love. But before we do that, here's the transition message. I want to lay some foundation about how we view each other and why it's important to engage in community. And this actually comes together at the tail end of the book of 1 Corinthians. So if you have a Bible, please open up to 1 Corinthians 13. It's on page 559 in the Blue Pew Bibles. Starting next week, we're going to look really closely at what Paul says about love. It's a really well-known part of the Bible, actually. Beautiful and stirring and challenging. And we kind of associate what Paul's talking about in 1 Corinthians with the kind of love that we should have for our spouse. We kind of associate with romantic love. But that's not at all Paul's intention. And that's what I want to focus on today as a way to set the stage for the next 2 weeks. I wanted to look at the context and get a good footing in 1 Corinthians 12 so we can understand the love chapter right after it, right? So right at the end of chapter 12, Paul was talking about how followers of Jesus should live in community. He listed some offices in the church, apostles, prophets, teachers, and then ways that we can build others up in the body. Miracles, healing, helping. And he said, not everyone does everything in the church. Not all are apostles. Do you see this? Not all are teachers. Not all speak in tongues. And then he transitions into what he says is the more excellent way. That's right before 1 Corinthians 13. Do you see that? What is the better way? Chapter 13. To do everything with love. To do everything with love. Paul's so clear here at 13. What's he saying? He says, if you do every outward action imaginable, and even if you do it with zeal and passion and excellence, he said, if it's done without love, what is it? Nothing. Nothing. If you do it without love, it's empty and worthless. That's how important love is to Paul. Look at this. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, all I am is a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, like think of the faith to move a mountain, but have not love, I'm nothing. If I give away all I have If I deliver up my body to be burned, you would think that would be the most sacrificial act full of love, right? But Paul says you can do that without love. And if you do so, you gain nothing. Now, put a pin there because we're going to move backwards in our Bibles today. We started in chapter 13, but we're going to move back, and I want to focus on chapter 12. We don't often do that, so it can be confusing. Why am I going backwards? Because this brings up something interesting that we can easily miss. Chapter 12 is all about the body of Christ. And there are a lot of important things about our life together. We're going to look at those things, but I want us to look at them, understanding what Paul has said here in chapter 13, and bring that focus back into what we're going to study today. Paul is saying that in whatever way we apply what he wrote about community, we must do so with love. We must do so with love. If we do not live in community with love, we're nothing. We gain nothing. Maybe even worse, we could be a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. Now, since we're reading this backwards, let me start with the summary verse, verse 27 in chapter 12. Now, you are the body of Christ and individually members of it. Now, you are, plural, the people of God are singular. The body of Christ, individually members of it. Many, yet one. I want to start by making sure we get a firm grasp on this. Paul is saying that together we form something. We don't form anything on our own. It's only when we're brought together that we form something. And what do we form? We're the body of Christ. It's an interesting illustration. A body is alive, which means a body can be healthy or sick, right? A body has a purpose and a function. A body is also made up of different parts, and each part, different and distinct as they are, exists together. And only together do they compose a body. This is the image Paul gives for the church, a body. But not just any body. We are the body of Christ, right? Meaning we represent Jesus. Not only that, Jesus is what unites us. Filter this, through what we just said about love. It only makes sense, right? Jesus' new command is that we love like he loves. And Paul adds on that we cannot represent Jesus or be united to one another through Jesus without this foundational piece of love. It's so important, so foundational to our life together. So there's three things that we're going to understand today about the body from chapter 12. We're going to talk about unity, diversity, and mutuality. And what I want us to see is that our unity must be loving unity. Our diversity must be loving diversity, and our mutuality must be loving mutuality. Everything we do and how we operate in this community must be done with love. Otherwise, it's like what Paul said, if we live in community without love, it's nothing. Let's see this as we study God's word together. So jump back all the way to near the beginning of chapter 12, in verse 12 of chapter 12. For just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. Do you hear the repetition of one there? For in one spirit we were all baptized into one body. Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, and all were made to drink of one spirit. Now we're going to keep going, but I want to pause here. And do you see the overwhelming sense of these verses? Many are one. Many are one. But we have to be careful because unity does not mean uniformity, right? We'll see in our next point that God made us different, and that's something we should celebrate. I think sometimes we see people and we're like, oh, I want to be more like them. And God's like, why would you want to do that? That's not how I made you, right? What this is getting at is that our common faith in Jesus unites us. Repetition, just as the body is one. Many members, we are one body. One spirit, all baptized into one body. We made a drink of one spirit. One. Unity means we come together and operate as a single unit. And we layer on this concept of love. It means we don't roll our eyes at someone who's got an idea or someone who wants to do some ministry or someone who's talking to us about something. We don't roll our eyes and say, oh, fine, do it however you want to do it, right? That's not unity. Unity means we joyfully and gladly unite around Jesus. There's this old Huey Lewis song that's been stuck in my head all week. Remember this one? Yes, it's true. I'm so happy to be stuck with you. Oh, I'm a kid of the 80s. Sorry. It might be stuck in your head this week, right? I'm so happy to be stuck with you. That should express how we feel about each other. Are you happy to be stuck with me? And am I happy to be stuck with you? Like, that's what it means to be loving unity. Okay, second thing we see about the body is our diversity. This highlights the fact that we aren't looking for uniformity. It's a celebration that God made us different. Pick up in verse 14. For the body does not consist of one member, but of many. If the foot should say, because I'm not a hand, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would be the sense of hearing? If the whole body were an ear, where would be the sense of smell? But as it is, God had arranged the members in the body, each one of them, as he chose. If all were a single member, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, yet one body. Now he says something more. The eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. On the contrary, he says the parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. And on those parts of the body that we think less honorable, we bestow the greater honor. And our unrepresentable parts are treated with greater modesty, which our more presentable parts do not require. What's Paul teaching here? We are not the same. We do not have the same giftings. We do not have the same function. There's a dangerous lie that we might be tempted to believe. It's this, that you need to be like someone else to order to have value or to be accepted. I want you to hear me clearly. The Bible blows that up. Do not believe that you need to be like someone else, that you don't need to be like me. You don't need to be like anybody else. You don't need to be different in order to have value. Be who God made you to be. That's what these verses are saying, right? Be who God made you to be. Celebrate how God made you. That's why this illustration of a body works so well. It's so genius. Imagine for a moment what someone would look like if they were made up of only arms and legs or hair and eyeballs. That's the stuff of horror movies, right? Or the background in Star Wars. We're told every person is valuable, and together we make up Christ's body. We are not the same. We have different gifts, different functions, different personalities, different roles, and every last one of us is valued. Let me say that again. Every last one of us is valued. We matter to God, and we matter to each other. So how do we live out this diversity in a loving way? First, we affirm each person's value. Affirm their value. Let others know you're glad they're here. Let them know you appreciate them. And now look at what Paul says. Certain parts of the body can't disqualify themselves. And no one can disqualify someone else. You can't disqualify yourself, and you can't disqualify someone else. The foot can't say, I'm not good enough, I'm not needed. You can't disqualify yourself. And the eye can't say to the hand, get out of your hand, you aren't needed. That's stupid, right? Don't let anyone disqualify you. This is helpful because both are prone to happening. There might be a temptation at times to lean one of these ways or the other. Now, let me give you an example. I was thinking about this for an office setting or even in the church. Do you know what happens when you have a staff full of creative people? Nothing. Just dreaming. That's all they do is dream. They don't put anything into action, right? Opposite problem on the other extreme. What happens if you have only detail-oriented people? Stuff gets done, but nothing ever changes. Nothing is fresh. There might be plenty of activity, but it might not be the most effective things. But what are we learning? Creative people need detail people. And detail people need creative people. And we could say that for a lot of different personality types. We need each other. So the loving thing is to celebrate how God's made someone else different from you. Celebrate and affirm the ways that we're different. And love other people by doing that. It's part of God's design. Okay, the final thing, starting in verse 24, is mutuality. Mutuality. But God has so composed the body, giving greater honor to the part that lacked it, that there may be no division in the body, but that the members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together. If one member is honored, all rejoice together. The bottom line is that everyone has an important role to play for the church to thrive. And everyone profits when we all contribute. And everyone's contribution is important. If one is suffering, it impacts all of us, right? We feel that. If one is honored, it impacts all of us. We can feel that. And Paul so eloquently uses this illustration of a body. So let me apply this metaphor. Just think of how important it is for the health of a body to eat, right? We all need to eat. Now, have you ever thought about this? How many different parts of the body are needed to turn food into energy? Almost every part. Now, never mind all the parts of the body needed to obtain food. Let's just take the eating and digestive part. The hands and arms need to get the food up to the mouth. And then what are the mouth and teeth and saliva, right? Chew the food and swallow it. The esophagus gets the food into the stomach. And in the stomach, all sorts of the parts of the body need to engage to turn that food into energy. And then you've got the rest of it to get rid of it, right? Now, the cells and the blood, they transport that energy throughout the body. It's the same with us. If we're to be healthy, every one of us is needed. Every one of us is needed. Every one of us is valuable. Every one of us needs to contribute. And when we do, we will thrive as a church. All that I've said today about the body, this was the context Paul is speaking to when he wrote 1 Corinthians 13. And this is really important stuff. That's what we're going to study the next 2 weeks. It's the foundation of our life together. But what I want to do as we close is zero in on how this relates to one of the underlying reasons for this sermon series. And to set that up, I'm going to make up a new word, all right? You've already heard me sing. You already heard me talk about Karate Kid. Now I'm going to make up a word. We talked about 3 aspects of our life together as the body of Christ. Now there's one more I want to highlight that's not in the text, but it's assumed in so much of what's written in the New Testament and what Jesus said. We talked about unity, a reminder that many become one. We talked about diversity, a reminder that every person is unique and should be celebrated for how God made us. And we talked about mutuality. We share our ups and downs. Every person contributes to the whole. Here's the new word, evangelity. Evangelity, and it rhymes and everything. What in the world does that mean, Eric? It's a reminder that each and every one of us plays a role in making Jesus known to others. Each and every one of us plays a role in making Jesus known. Not just that, it's more. It's the shared burden we have to love our city, to love our community, and show others how great Jesus is. Tim Chester wrote a book titled Total Church, and he said, God's intention for the church is that we together, we, not pastors, not just the people up on stage, we together would be the vehicle through which God reveals his glory. Jesus came to create a people who would model what it means to live under his rule. Jesus came to create a people who would model what it means to live under his rule. He goes on to say that what they often see is people who don't know Jesus are first attracted to the Christian community before they're attracted to the Christian message. People are first attracted to the Christian community before the message, meaning it matters very much how we love each other. It matters very much how we care for one another, how we have patience for one another, all the things. It's our love that proclaims the gospel. Now, let me explain evangelity by explaining something Jesus said. Maybe you've never thought of this before. I hadn't until this week. One of the main illustrations Jesus used for evangelism was this idea of turning fishermen into fishers of men, right? You've heard this? As Americans, we hear that and we think about individuals going fishing. Maybe at best they get in a boat with 1 or 2 other guys and each person has their rod and reel, right? As individuals. And because of that, that's our primary way of thinking about evangelism, right? Oh, I'm supposed to be a fisher of men, so I better go do that. Who are my neighbors? Who are my coworkers? And I have to be a fisher of men, get my rod and reel. But step back for a moment. Culturally, that's not how they fished at all. That's not how they fished at all. What did they do? A whole crew of men would get in boats and cast out these giant nets together, right? And every single one of them, if they got a good haul, was needed to pull that net back into the boat. Listen, fishing was a community event. Everyone was needed. That's what Jesus is talking about. When he says, I'm going to make you fishers of men, he's talking about everybody doing a part, right? I'll make you collectively, the body, fishers of men. That would have been the image in their minds when they heard Jesus. That they would have thought, oh, we do this together. Us Americans are like, well, I better go get my lunch pail and go do it myself. That's not at all what Jesus is talking about. And that's what I mean by evangelity. We reach others together. And one of the main things that is going to draw people towards God is our love. That's one of the main reasons behind this sermon series. It's our love. Part of why we're taking this extended look at loving others is because it's hard to love others well. Think back to how I started this sermon. It's hard to love because it takes humility to love well. And humility is hard, remember? The root of the word has this idea of something being broken down. Embedded is this idea of death. So to be truly humble, something inside you needs to die. What needs to die? Specifically, your pride, right? One of my hopes for this series is that we'd become more humble. And as we do it, it enable us to love each other and love others better. How do we become more humble? I think one of the main ways is looking at the cross, celebrating what Jesus did for us. And at Hope, we call this communion. So if the communion servers would come down and grab the elements and pass them out, there is some bread and some juice. So if you take one of each and just hold it, we will celebrate together. As they pass that out, let me just keep going and explain how Jesus understood this idea of community better than anyone. Just think of how far Jesus took this idea of mutuality. He went so far as to sacrifice himself so that everyone else could have new life. All right, you guys can start to pass it out. And isn't that exactly what we said was at the root of the word we get humble from? Death of one leads to life for another. Death of one leads to life for another. That's the gospel message. And that's what we celebrate when we celebrate communion. You're being handed a cup and a piece of bread, and they each represent something special, something unique in regards actually to all the religions of the world. You see, in every other religion, you must do something to reach up or to strive to get to God. But Christianity is different. And that's what we're celebrating today. We don't have to do something heroic or make our way up to God. Not at all. In fact, what are we celebrating? Jesus came down to us. And Jesus did everything needed to bring us salvation. Jesus died so that we can live. His body was broken so you could be whole. That's what is represented in the bread. Jesus' body broken for you so you could be whole. And his blood was shed so you can be forgiven. That's what the cup represents. The unmistakable message of Christianity is exactly what's happening in this room right now. We receive something from God. We don't earn it. We can't work hard enough to get it. It is freely given to us. And the question is, will you receive it? Will you receive it? Will you accept what Jesus did for you and enter into a life-giving relationship with him? If you have, this is a reminder and a celebration of that in communion. And it's meant to humble us. It's meant to remind us that we didn't do anything to earn this.